Okay, I want you to imagine a chessboard for a second. But, this isn't some Netflix show. We're not talking about pawns and knights here.
Right.
On this board, the pieces are like the GDPs of entire nations, the global supply chain, and really the future of human intelligence.
It's high stakes.
It's the highest stakes. And the scary thing this source we're looking at highlights is that a single move, say, a flare-up in the Middle East, could just instantly topple the biggest pieces on the entire board.
It almost sounds like a thriller novel, doesn't it? But what we're unpacking today argues that this is the literal physical reality of our world right now.
Exactly.
You can't separate a military move in the Persian Gulf from a stock crash in Silicon Valley. They're fused together.
And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're doing a deep dive into this piece of analysis called the Silicon Shield, Geopolitical Chess and the AI Race. And I have to tell you, this one kept me up.
It paints a very, very stark picture. It's asking us to stop looking at the news as all these little separate bubbles.
Yeah, like here's a story on oil, here's one on a tech company.
Right. And here's another about tensions in the South China Sea. The source argues those aren't separate stories at all. They're all part of one single, extremely taut wire.
And our mission today is to trace that wire.
Right.
We're going to see how things that seem totally random, from instability in Venezuela to threats against Iran, are, as the text puts it, inextricably linked to the phone in your pocket.
And to all the AI models everyone is so focused on. And we're going to see why the U.S. economy might be, well, a lot more fragile than the S&P 500 would have you believe. Because when you peel back that digital layer, you find out the cloud isn't just floating up in the sky.
No.
It's grounded in a very specific and very dangerous part of the world.
So let's start where it always starts, with the money. The economic foundation of this whole house of cards. The source is really focused on the Magnificent Seven.
Of course.
Now, we all know who they are. Alphabet, NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, you know the list.
Yeah.
But the source throws out this one stat that it really just stopped me in my tracks.
The sheer concentration of value.
Yes. It claims these 7 companies keep about a third of the U.S. economy afloat. I mean, we know they're big, but when you put it that way,
It's staggering.
if they catch a cold, the U.S. economy gets pneumonia.
To put that into perspective for everyone listening, the combined market cap of just those 7 is larger than the GDP of Germany and Japan combined.
Wow.
We're talking about nation-state levels of economic power concentrated in, what, less than a dozen boardrooms?
But here's where the source makes a really crucial pivot. We usually think of them as tech stocks, right?
Right.
But the text rebrands them. It calls them largely AI developers.
Which is absolutely the right lens for today. Whether it's Tesla with self-driving, NVIDIA building the chips, or Meta training its models, their future value is almost entirely based on dominating AI.
That's the whole growth engine.
Exactly. Take AI out of the equation, and those companies look very, very different.
Okay, so we have these titans. They're holding up the whole U.S. economy, and they are betting everything on AI. But here's the friction point. I think most of us, even people who follow this stuff, still think in terms of software. Google is code, Microsoft is software. It just exists in the ether somewhere.
That's what you could call the cloud fallacy. It's the great illusion of our time. We think because the output is digital, the input must be digital too.
But it's not.
No. The source material pulls us right back down to earth. Literally. It argues that these trillion-dollar valuations are all resting on a very physical, very vulnerable supply chain.
And it points out 2 specific choke points. The first one is China's rare earth minerals. Now, we hear this term rare earths thrown around all the time. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. But why is it such a critical vulnerability? Can't we just dig them up somewhere else? I mean, they're in the ground all over, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And that's a really common misconception. The minerals themselves, things like gallium, germanium, they aren't necessarily rare geologically, but the processing. That's a completely different story. China doesn't just mine them. They have something close to a monopoly on the refining capacity.
So it's not about finding the rock. It's about what you do with the rock after.
Exactly. For some of these key elements you need for high-end chips, China controls something like 80, maybe 90% of the global processing market.
Wow.
You can't build a Tesla battery or an NVIDIA chip without it passing through that supply chain. It is a choke point that would take a decade to engineer your way out of.
Okay, so that's choke point 1, the raw ingredients. But then we get to choke point 2, which is, this is the big one, the one the entire Silicon Shield theory is built on, TSMC.
Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Probably the most important company in the world that most people still haven't heard of.
And the source argues that the Magnificent Seven, and by extension, that entire third of the U.S. economy, is fundamentally dependent on chips made by this one company
Yes.
on this one island.
Yes.
But let me play devil's advocate for a minute. We passed the Checkmates Act. We're building new factories in Arizona and Ohio.
Yeah.
Intel is ramping up, aren't we? Aren't we
Yeah.
fixing this?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the answer really comes down to time and complexity. Yes, we're building fabs, but TSMC isn't just a factory, it's an entire ecosystem. They're already producing 3-nanometer chips and moving to 2-nanometer. It's manufacturing at the atomic scale.
It's not like building a toaster oven.
It's the most complex manufacturing process in human history. And the source implies that even with all this new investment, the U.S. is years, maybe a decade, away from being able to truly replicate what TSMC does in Taiwan today.
And the AI race is happening.
Right now. The Magnificent Seven need those chips today, not in 2028 when a factory in Phoenix might be up and running.
So what you're saying is the U.S. economy has basically outsourced its lungs to an island that sits about 100 miles off the coast of its biggest geopolitical rival.
That is the precise definition of the risk.
Which, okay, that sets the stage for the whole geopolitical chess scenario. The source walks through a very specific domino effect, and I want to go through this slowly because it connects dots I had never connected before.
Okay.
It starts with a weird phrase, after Venezuela. Why? Why Venezuela? How does Caracas connect to Taipei?
It's not about Venezuela being a major player. It's about the idea of distraction or overextension.
Okay.
The source is building a sequence of chaos. After Venezuela just implies a world where the U.S. is already stretched thin, maybe unable to manage even smaller crises in its own backyard. It sets the tone.
So the board is already messy, the U.S. is distracted, and then comes the real trigger. The source lays out a scenario where the U.S. and Israel attack Iran.
And notice the careful phrasing in the source. It says they are threatening to do so. It's presenting it as a plausible, not a definite escalation.
But why is this the trigger? The Middle East has been tense for decades. Why would a conflict with Iran, specifically, put the whole AI race in danger?
It's about resources and attention. A hot war with Iran would be a massive logistical undertaking for the U.S.
Right.
Carrier strike groups would move to the Persian Gulf, missile defense systems get redeployed, all the diplomatic focus goes there.
The source calls it the ultimate distraction.
Exactly. It creates a vacuum.
Yeah.
If the U.S. military is fully committed to a conflict in the Middle East, its ability to project power in the Pacific goes way down. You just can't be everywhere at once with maximum force.
And that's when the other shoe drops. The source argues that while all eyes are on Tehran, China makes its move.
The move to retake Taiwan.
And we hear about this threat all the time.
Yeah.
But in this context, it's not just about invading a piece of land. The source is explicit. By taking Taiwan, they control TSMC.
And this is where that silicon shield idea gets flipped completely on its head. The original theory was that Taiwan is so valuable to everyone, the world has to protect it.
It was a shield against invasion.
Right, because everyone needs the chips. But this source argues the complete opposite.
That its value makes it a target.
Precisely. If controlling TSMC means you control the future of the entire global economy, then it's not a shield, it's the ultimate prize. It's the king on the chessboard. You capture it, you win the whole game.
Okay, let's drill down on that winning the game part. The source makes a very, very bold claim. It says if China controls TSMC, they decide who gets TSMC's chips. And then the conclusion is just stark. The U.S. loses all hope of winning the AI race.
Well, think about what that would mean, practically. Imagine it's 2027. China controls the island. They don't have to blow up the factories. They just nationalize the output.
Right.
Suddenly, NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, they all place their orders for the next-gen AI processors, and the answer is just no.
Or you get the old stuff.
You can have the old generation, but we're keeping the cutting-edge chips for Baidu and Tencent.
But hold on. Couldn't the U.S. just sanction them, blockade their oil? I mean, it's not like the U.S. is powerless here.
Oh, of course not. The U.S. has moves. But remember the premise. The U.S. is already bogged down in a major conflict in the Middle East. And more importantly, the immediate effect on the AI sector would be catastrophic.
At an instant.
Instant. You can't train the next GPT model or a new defense algorithm if you don't have the compute. If that spigot gets turned off, the Magnificent Seven stop being magnificent very, very quickly. Their entire growth model just collapses.
And since they make up a third of the economy,
The market crash would be unlike anything we have ever seen. It wouldn't be a tech correction. It would be a fundamental systemic shock to the entire economy.
It is terrifying to think how much of what we call digital superiority is actually just supply chain efficiency.
That's the core of it.
We think you're winning because our code is better, but
No.
maybe we're just winning because we have access to the hardware. Take away that access.
Yeah.
We're just writing code on paper.
That is the big aha moment in the text. We confuse designing the chip with making the chip. The U.S. designs the best chips in the world, no question, but they don't make them. And in a geopolitical crisis, possession is everything.
So let's just retrace this domino chain, because I want everyone listening to feel the weight of this. Step 1, an economy that is incredibly reliant on 7 huge AI companies.
The Magnificent Seven.
Step 2, those companies are totally dependent on physical hardware, rare earths, and advanced chips from China and Taiwan.
The physical choke points.
Step 3, a geopolitical distraction happens. The source uses a U.S.-Israel-Iran conflict as the example, which pulls American power to the Middle East.
The opening on the board.
Step 4, China uses that opening to seize Taiwan and with it TSMC.
The capture.
And step 5, the U.S. is cut off from the hardware it needs to run its future economy. It loses the AI race.
Check.
It really is a fragile system we've built, this incredibly efficient, just-in-time global supply chain. It just has zero redundancy for a major conflict.
Efficiency is not resilience. We optimized everything for profit and for speed, and we just assumed the world would stay peaceful. If that assumption proves wrong, our greatest strength, that efficiency, becomes our biggest liability.
I want to circle back for a second to the rare earths, because even if the full Taiwan scenario doesn't happen, let's say the U.S. successfully defends Taiwan.
Okay.
Aren't we still stuck on the minerals?
That's the death by 1,000 cuts scenario. Even without an invasion, China has levers it can pull. We've seen it already with their export controls on things like gallium and germanium.
They can just squeeze.
They can just squeeze, they can raise prices, delay shipments, introduce quotas.
So they could effectively throttle the entire U.S. AI sector without ever firing a single shot.
Precisely. They can slow us down. And in the AI race, speed is everything. If you're 6 months behind training your model because you couldn't get the parts, you might as well be 6 years behind. It's a winner-take-all game.
This whole analysis really forces you to think about national security in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about tanks and aircraft carriers anymore. It's about supply chains. It's about mining rights. It's about fabrication plants.
It fuses economic security with national security. They're no longer separate things. You cannot separate the health of Microsoft from the foreign policy of the United States. They are two sides of the same coin now.
And it makes you look at those headlines about tensions in the strait with a lot more anxiety. It's not some faraway problem. The source is saying it's a direct threat to your 401k and your digital life.
And that's what the analysis is trying to do. It's trying to shake us out of this complacency. We assume the tech revolution is just inevitable, unstoppable.
Right.
And this argument says, no, actually, it's hanging by a very thin thread.
So before we wrap up, is there any good news in any of this? Or is it just a roadmap to doom?
Well, I suppose the good news is that awareness is finally shifting. The fact that the Chip PS Act even exists, the fact that supply chain resilience is now a real boardroom conversation, that matters. We're waking up to the problem.
The question is just, are we waking up fast enough?
That is the real race, isn't it? The race between building resilience and the next geopolitical crisis.
Well, on that note, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to chew on. We spent this whole deep dive talking about the silicon shield. This idea that Taiwan is protected because it's so valuable.
Right.
But based on everything we've just unpacked, if the entire future of AI, and really the modern world, depends on this single company in this single geographic location, does that really make it a shield? Or have we just painted a giant bullseye on the world's most dangerous Achilles heel?
That is the ultimate question. Is it our greatest defense, or is it our fatal flaw?
Just something to think about the next time you ask your AI assistant for a recipe. It took a global village and a lot of geopolitical risk to get that answer to you.
As always, thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. Stay curious, keep connecting the dots, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.